Good morning, everyone. I'm Claude Granitsky. I'm from Togo, and it was so wonderful to see this beautiful image of Dakar in the background. I've spent a lot of time there over the years, and it was also really interesting to hear the president of Senegal speak about how the population of our African continent is going to double, right, from more or less 1.2, 1.3 billion to 2.5 billion. So that means that, when people talk about the fact that there's more children born in Nigeria every year than in the entire European Union, you can just see the potential and the power of that explosive population growth. And so I'm really honored to have a wonderful panel with me. I see some familiar faces, so it's great to be with you, some of my friends and our friends who came. We're going to start with the Nigerian, as we always do. And I'm going to ask each one of my panelists to quickly just introduce himself. Unfortunately, there's no women in the room, so we talked about inclusivity, but it's guys for now. This is what you're stuck with. So we're going to start with Maxwell Kalu. Please introduce yourself.
Afternoon, everybody. I'm Maxwell Kalu, founder, CEO of the African Warriors Fighting Championship. Put it simply, we're creating an African UFC, the biggest combat sports platform on the continent.
You think everybody knows what UFC is?
I'd hope so. I mean, Riyadh is crazy about combat sports at the moment.
Okay.
But if you're unfamiliar, the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship, African Warriors Fighting Championship, the home of combat sports, fastest growing sports segment in the world currently, estimated 550 million global fans. So a really exciting opportunity that we're going after.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. So from Nigeria, we go north actually north, and some people would say south, but north to India.
Thank you very
Manoj Madnani, please introduce
Sure.
yourself and Beacon and what you've been doing.
Thank you very, very much. Firstly, I'd like to thank you all for the gift of your time. I sit at the intersection of media, energy, and healthcare. And Ibrahim and I have gone back many years in the energy sector. Now we've transitioned into the media sector. And I've basically seen a significant amount of trends. And when I look at the global south, or what I call the global majority today, you have 50% of the world's GDP that is based between Latin America, Africa, the Middle East, India, and Southeast Asia. You have a population, which is why Maxwell's theory is 100% correct. You've got 85% of the world's youth under the age of 25 in what I call the global south. So the entire continent of Africa, and I call India as a continent, it's not a country, the demographics align. Right. And the opportunity is just incredible. And I'm really excited that those opportunities are now emanating from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which is why we are here today. So thank you all very, very much.
So we're going to talk about what some people have been saying, as in Africa is the new India. But I wanted to maybe ask you about the link between energy and entertainment and media, which is what we're talking about here, because it sounds pretty tenuous, this
So
link.
I think energy drives everything. We're in the H to H business, human to human. And I think when I look at it, this is a relationship that transcends industries. So energy drives everything. But what I also see, it's not Africa or India, it's that 1 + 1 = 11. How do you make Africa and India work together to become the largest powerhouse? As Ibrahim said before, you have 25% of the world's population on these two continents.
Right.
That's serious. So if you can find a way to work together and cross-pollinate talent and content, which Silverbacks is doing via their production with Forever 7 Media, which we're also looking at a few scripts, there's a very interesting thing. And then if you can put in the Saudi Arabian or the GCC angle into this entire mix, you're creating something that no studio in the world, no media company is looking at, including UFC, generating fighters from here, taking them out to the world.
Is this a subtle or collective pitch to the Saudi investors in the room? Is that
No,
where you're going with this?
I just think that this is the first time you're seeing a very intentional approach, whether it's Netflix or Amazon or any of the streamers. They don't have enough content from the continent. For everyone's benefit, the largest content creator in the world is Nigeria. It's Nollywood beats #1 over anybody else.
What about Bollywood?
Bollywood, so India is a continent, so you have Bollywood for North India and you have Tollywood for South India.
Right.
So if you sit there and think about it, but if you put all these pieces together, you have a powerhouse sitting right there.
Let's get into that. So that was a nice segue, Ibrahim, into Silverback Holdings, which I've been following for actually since Silverback was just a twinkle in your eye. I remember the days before Silverback. But please just introduce yourself, because I have a very specific question for you.
Well, Claude, glad to be here. Definitely grateful to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for hosting us. It's a massive honor to be speaking right after the president of my country, so couldn't be more glad. But in terms of myself, Senegalese, married to a Nigerian, live in Egypt, and spent the last 30 years working, as you heard from my good friend Manoj, in infrastructure, oil and gas, and natural resource in general, because my career has been in finance, and you realize that the entire world can be depicted under 3 buckets. One, for natural resource, whether it is food or resources that we refine. Second bucket, infrastructure, and the last bucket is consumers. And fundamentally, our continent has been known and visited and occupied in the past for natural resource. Heavily invested around infrastructure, again, for the purpose of getting natural resource. Consumer space is always, for geography, the space you need to develop for yourself, because the foreign forces typically come to just take the resources. The infrastructure they invest is to take the resources. But for where we stand as Africa, we've always exported something that lies around human capital. And if you think about it, whether it is in terms of immigrants, whether it is in terms of sports or entertainment, we've been always present. If you take the entertainment sector and take Broadway, the highest grossing
Broadway
play
musical
in the US up to today is
The Lion King.
The Lion King,
Absolutely.
which
So
is African content.
before we go to Broadway, let's stay on the African continent for a while, because that's why we're here. And so when you mention human capital, I think about a statistic that is actually quite puzzling to a lot of us Africans. You know, if we look at the fact there's maybe 1.2, as I said, 1.3 billion Africans, what you told me, Ibrahim, is that maybe only 50 million of those Africans make more than $10 a day. So when you talk about human capital, you also have to talk about the capital that the humans have or don't have. So how do we wrestle with the fact that we have these big dreams for Africa media and entertainment, but the reality is the purchasing power is so low for most Africans? Let's start with you, Ibrahim.
That's a very good question. So for any investor, it's always important to look at the opportunity, but you also have to think about the why now. So our firm Silverback, when we started it 5 years ago,
Silverback started in 2019.
Today is our fifth year anniversary.
Yeah.
So something we're celebrating in the kingdom, so it's another great honor. But when we started this, there's one thing we noticed, was that there has never been recently a more salient moment of confluence around melanin at the global stage, whether it's an African American, African, or Caribbean.
So now you're talking about global Africa.
So global
not just
Africa,
the African
exactly.
continent.
So that entire global Africa, today is the best time to build that bridge, because that 50 million you point to in Africa, which has a limited set of people to give you $10 a day, is complemented by 160 million that reside outside the continent and ship back home $100 billion a year. That's $650 per year, which you forget about. So if you do the math in reverse, it means that there's probably north of, you multiply that number by 20 in
Right,
terms of the
so-
amount you can tap into.
So now you're talking about the 160 million Africans in the diaspora, but what about the Afro-descendants? You know, African Americans, Afro-Caribbeans, Africans living here in Saudi, Afro-Brazilians. You know, how do you kind of bridge that gap?
It's all about finding a way to leverage technology and provide services that that vast amount of people needs. The African that's here, the African that's in New York, that is in Atlanta, is always going to miss a curated product that someone that's sitting in Africa can provide if he does it using technology, can provide getting FX. So the disposable income that's hosted outside, today, through technology, you can provide entertainment, you can provide food, you can provide music, and that service, that consumer space, is actually global. And that's the biggest opportunity to finance.
And that is the global nature of it is what I want to discuss with you, Maxwell, because you have these dreams of disseminating this kind of homegrown, very authentic African content to the whole world in the way that many people have noticed that Afrobeats is being consumed in the whole world. I mean, I was in Kyoto in Japan last year, and the taxi driver who doesn't even speak English, let alone pidgin English, was jamming to Burna Boy. What you're doing with African Warriors is in a similar kind of vein because you're tapping into the power of digital technology, the kind of technologies that Ibrahim was talking about. So what are you trying to achieve with this homegrown content around combat sports from an African perspective?
Exactly, and I think when we're talking about the African opportunity, I don't think we should limit our thinking to just an African audience or an African diaspora or descendants, because we've seen that demand for African content is exploding globally, and that's not just amongst us Africans or amongst the diaspora. Look at Afrobeats, for example. Last time I checked, Afrobeat streams in the US were up 220% in 1 year. That's not just the African diaspora driving that interest. And we've seen it with African Warriors in terms of we produce content which is very loudly, proudly African. We feature sports which are traditionally African, but we found very quickly that the audience that we're attracting goes beyond that. So after Nigeria, our home market, we have the US and Brazil as our key markets in terms of interest. And last check, we had over 700 million views. So we have a huge fan base growing, which is totally independent of Africa, but seeking African content. And I think we're seeing that across the board, be it music, be it cinema, be it now sports. So I think it's an exciting time, really.
Well, that gets me really excited when I think of what, Manoj, you called cross-pollination. Because if you mentioned Afrobeats, to me, Afrobeats became mainstream when Drake did that song with Wizkid, that one dance song, right? It was a Canadian rapper with a boy from Lagos, and that song went global, right? And that was the beginning. And to me, I also see it as a harbinger of positive things to come in terms of disseminating this African content globally. But the reality, if we talk about ownership and intellectual property, is that the people who own these platforms are in Silicon Valley, right? Or the West Coast of America. If we look at Netflix, if we look at Amazon, if we look at some of the big distribution platforms, I don't see many African-owned platforms. So how do we counter that and deal with that and solve for that?
I mean, I think that was a big driver for us in terms of when you look at the combat sports landscape, you have the UFC, that's North American, that's the big dog leader in the space. You have Asia, you have One Championship, that's the company there. And now you have African Warriors, which is Africa's global contribution. And I think you mentioned something about ownership, and I think it's key in terms of we have African athletes competing at the highest level of pretty much every sport. But there are not many African organizations, there are not many loud, proud African organizations. So that was a big impetus in doing what we're doing. And following that impetus, we've been able to show that now the audience is there. We've been able to bring in international partners such as Stake.com, the biggest international crypto gambling website, which came on board as a headline sponsor. So it's just showing really that now is this time for a renewed sense of African confidence. You mentioned Afrobeats. We're no longer making songs with fake American accents. We're very much owning our stories and being authentic about it. And I'm seeing it across the board for us.
It used to be uncool to have an African accent, right? Now it's super cool to be speaking like Burna Boy, right? And so, I mean, when you talk about homegrown initiatives, I mean, we do have to hype you up a little bit, Ibrahim, because you invested in the Cape Town Tigers, which was a semi-finalist, in the league for Basketball Africa League, which is a big story in itself. Barack Obama invested. A lot of people believe in what the Basketball Africa League can do. But I want to go to Manoj for a second, because when you talk about India in relation to Africa, it also gives me a lot of hope, because those of us who kind of spend a lot of time in the United States, we're always struck by how the most successful Americans are Indian Americans. Yeah. They have the highest per capita income of any Americans, more than white Americans. The most successful tech leaders, or Amazon, not Amazon, maybe soon Amazon, but Microsoft, Google, that was a slip.
He knows something that we don't know.
I know something
it's coming, but it's a matter of time.
Google, Microsoft, many other large companies.
YouTube, one of them, yeah. Look, I think if you just take a step back, right, and you touched upon a couple of points, and I'm going to try to bring them all in. First thing is that exactly what you said, Claude, in the India media sector recognized that there was too much control coming out of Silicon Valley. Very intentional approach to defining the media sector. We have probably the most robust production schedule I've seen, whether it's Bollywood or Tollywood, South India, North India. You will see a lot of the media and entertainment celebrities in India, they don't even want to go outside, because there's such a large market there that and it's interesting for them, the collaboration partner is Africa. It's who can we partner with in Nigeria, South Africa, Senegal, Togo, Ghana, because there's such a similar demographic profile, it works. Second thing is, it was a very intentional approach. So they decided not to follow Hollywood's agents and run around, and it's a rat race. And today, the world has changed thanks to this. We all have this, right? If I see something I like and I have enough followers, and I say, this is a great thing, guess what? That person is going to get picked up, whether it's a studio, a music company, gaming company, someone's going to pick them up and figure out how to integrate them in, right? So that's second thing. The third thing is intentional approach to distribution.
Right.
So today, if I believe I'm a singer, which I'm not, I can upload a video onto YouTube and hopefully put some marketing out there and hopefully get some hits. Previously, you could never do that. So there is a repositioning of the African voice that's about to start on a global level, and listening to what Maxwell is doing. Ibrahim, I'm sitting on the board of Silverbacks, and Ibrahim.
And Silverbacks is also an investor in Maxwell company,
exactly.
so it all comes full circle.
Together, and Ibrahim sits on our board. Beacon Media, my partner is Dr. Deepak Chopra. What are we doing? We are effectively bringing stories to life in focusing on the global south.
We love Deepak Chopra. Look, I know I just got the notification we have 2 minutes left. So what are you excited about, Ibrahim, right now?
So to me, the thing that excites me the most is what nobody sees.
That's very
Everybody's talking about AI, and our singular belief at Silverbacks is the remedy to AI in 5 to 10 years is going to be something underneath our eye all along, which is live entertainment and sports. Think about refined food and what we call today organic food.
Yeah.
What is organic food? Except simple food you used to find in the farm. Over time, we discover the AI of food, which was refined, sophisticated, faster, better. 10 years, 40 years later, we realized that it's actually pretty negative. And today, what do? We surcharge normal food. So our simple thesis is entertainment, what Maxwell is doing, having fights that get watched locally. Like, these are events where you have people sitting 3 to 5 hours the national betting company, stake investing, us investing. Because in 5 years, when you sit on your phone and 90% of what you see, you don't know if it's real, the only remedy you have is to take your shoes, walk out, go watch a game, a match, or go to the park. And you will put any price on it. And you'll start having tourism going to a whole different level from this continent. You will have people paying a premium to actually come physically see things because they need it, because they want to get out of the phone.
Thank you all. I think I got the cue that we need to wrap up. 10 seconds, what are you most excited about, Manoj? 10 seconds.
I'm excited about the opportunity in the Global South.
The Global South, I love that. What about you, Maxwell?
I'm excited about the future of African sports. We have the talent. Increasingly, we now have global eyeballs, and it's now just time to get organized and go after it.
Thank you. Thank
We
you
would
all.
be
This has been
remiss if we don't ask you, what are you most excited about?
I'm excited about the Limitless Africa podcast and the work we're doing with the Equity Alliance, investing in women and people of color across these industries. So it's been a great panel, and thank you all for being so open-minded, even though it was still very cryptic at times. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, we need a selfie.
Thank you very much, Claude, and to your panel. Gentlemen, if I can direct you this way. Are you doing a selfie? Okay, can I get in the selfie? Woo.
You're in there.
I'm in the selfie.
Yes.
And we're gonna
No. We gotta go. He's trying to take over the stage. I'm not gonna let you do that.